George Osborne to remain stubborn on tax credits. Despite Tory backlash, we are not going to move on it. No caveats. David Cameron and George Osborne will remain stubborn on their plans to cut $4.5 billion a year from the working tax credits bill, with a Downing Street source insisting they are not going to move on it. It comes despite another senior Conservative figure urging a rethink on the cuts, which are set to make 3.2 million families worse off by an average of £1,300 a year when they come into effect next April. These politicians are so despicable it's unbelievable. Having never had to worry about money for a single day in their whole grubby privileged lives, having gifted themselves a £10,000 plus pay rise earlier this year, having spent record amounts in expenses in the last year, and despite more and more people now realising where the tax credit issue could lead, they are still, without any remorse, going to hit the hard-working families, the least well-off families, the families the Tories say they now represent. So, now the Tories aren't going to budge an inch on tax credits. Look at what the Tory graph is reporting today. I'll read a bit of it and I will highlight something very interesting. Bank of England Governor Mark Carney to intervene in Brexit debate. Mark Carney is to make a potentially seismic intervention into the debate on the UK's place in the European Union. The Governor of the Bank of England is to make a speech on the subject on Wednesday in what could prove to be one of the most crucial developments to date in the looming referendum campaign. Although the date for the referendum has yet to be set, David Cameron, the pig-loving Prime Minister, has promised it will take place by the end of 2017. Mr. Carney is due to give a speech on the evening of October 21st to coincide with the release of a report into how Britain's membership of the European Union affects the central bank's ability to manage the economy and how it affects its ability to protect the country's biggest banks. Let me just repeat that last sentence for you again. Let it sink in. Just make sure you understood that properly. Mr. Carney is due to give a speech on the evening of the 21st of October to coincide with the release of a report into how Britain's membership of the European Union affects the central bank's ability to manage the economy and how it affects its ability to protect the country's biggest banks. You see, when the next financial collapse happens, caused again by the bankers, the banks, as it says above, will be protected and saved and bailed out again, this time with untold trillions, because this collapse will far outweigh the last collapse, and that cost us over $1 trillion. So whilst the silver spoon millionaires in the Tories cut the tax credit of the working poor, they are already preparing themselves to protect, bail out, fund, give cash to the biggest banks in the country, to protect the bank's future, to protect the Tory donors' futures, to make sure they continue to get their billions in bonuses. Are we honestly gonna let them bail out the banks again? How many people have to die of starvation in our own country for us to put people above bankers? Jeremy Corbyn wants to help the poor, and he gets called a national security threat by our pig-loving Prime Minister. You can see where David Cameron's priorities lie, can't you? It certainly isn't with everyday folk. In fact, David Cameron and his ilk don't actually see us as people at all. They see us as cattle to be fed, dumbed down and killed when they decide. I think the Conservatives actually want people to go out and riot so that they can clamp down, call us all terrorists in emergency legislation that the MPs will scurry around to pass in a heartbeat. This will give them a chance to further their obvious police state agenda, "Oh, we aren't going into a police state," I hear the average X Factor watcher cry. No, of course not. Ending free speech with political correctness, cameras everywhere you go, spying on your every move, computers tracking back, telling the government exactly what you're doing when you're doing it, making it harder to see what the government are up to. No police state here. Move along, these aren't the droids we're looking for. But people need to be smarter this time. Don't just smash stuff up, that's easy. Anyone can do that. It's almost brainless. People need to think about what action will be the most effective against the government. For example, everyone dumping their black bags of rubbish outside banks during the night, like they did in Portugal a few years ago. Maybe smearing their windows with off-stinking food. I couldn't condone putting dog poo through their letterboxes, absolutely not. What about blocking petrol stations and refineries? Remember when the lorry drivers did that? They nearly brought the country to its knees. But again, I'm not advocating these actions. Not at all. But hitting them hard in the pocket, that's what will make them react the quickest. Imagine if all small businesses in an area, imagine if they got together and told the HMRC that unless they get the same tax rate as Facebook, or unless Facebook and the rest of the multinational tax-avoiding parasitical companies are taxed at the same rate as local businesses, then the local businesses will withhold their taxes and their PAYE. This type of action, if enough people do it, will bring the country to its knees. Just stop paying for what we're not getting. We have the numbers, they don't. People need to come together. They need to, I hate the expression, but think outside the box. People need to be clever when it comes to hurting the system. Just rioting, smashing stuff up. You're pissing on your own chips doing that. I mean, look at this article. The Tories seem to be insane because they now want to hit the voting bloc that put them in power. By this I mean the secret Tory voters who just couldn't bear thinking about Ed Miliband being in power. Government planning, $7 billion assault on gold-plated final salary pension schemes. The government is gearing up for a major raid on some of Britain's most generous pension schemes, which could see doctors, teachers, and senior executives' retirement funds cut by more than a quarter, the Telegraph understands. You see those secret Tory voters? How's it going to end for you, eh? I bet you secretly thought that by voting for a man who likes to put his penis into a dead pig's mouth, you were going to get those lazy benefit people, didn't you? I bet you thought David Cameron and George Osborne would look after you because you think you're middle class, don't you? Well, enjoy at least a quarter of your pension going missing to the government, pension that you've saved your whole life for, just to be taken by George Osborne. All of those years of saving are looking forward to a lovely pension, and Cocaine George, who likes things inserted up his rectum apparently, is going to take it from you in one foul swoop. I bet you'll start getting upset now, won't you, middle class person? You being hit by the cuts? Well, that wasn't part of the plan. No one is safe from this government. Any other ideas for civil disobedience? Leave them in the comments and we'll have a chat about them.